Well, hello. Thanks for coming back to check out another video. So, I just first want to say that Mother Nature is sabotaging me. It is allergy season. My eyes are watering like crazy. I'm not going to apologize for it because it's out of my control. However, I just like to point it out because I can see when I go back and edit these videos like, honey, your makeup looks a little funny in the outer V. That's all it is. I'm just crying. I am allergic to myself, as my husband likes to put it. You are not here, though, to hear about me ramble on about how Mother Nature is trying to sabotage me. You clicked on the video because it's apparently very evident by the title that we are going to look at all of the eyeshadow palettes that have come into my collection since the beginning of this year. Now, let me just refresh your memory just for a minute. Remember at the beginning of the year in January when I was like, oh, I only want to buy 4 eyeshadow palettes this year. It's just unrealistic. It's not going to happen. However, I recognize that I need to cool my roll. I don't need to add in so many new bright and shiny things into my life. So I don't know like what my new goal, my new intentions, my new plan for purchasing and bringing eyeshadows into my collection is going to be. I'm going to take like the month of May to kind of sort through that and figure things out. But I just wanted to put that out there. Like, I am well aware that I have, let this explode, let this problem continue to grow. But I am quite comfortable with the size of my eyeshadow palette collection as it stands. So in the description box, I'm also going to link for you guys, though, the video, which I'm affectionately calling my full-length feature film. But it is my eyeshadow palette collection video from, January 2022. So it's the most recent one. But if you just wanted to go back through and look at that and see like, oh, okay, these are the things that she did have, and now here's how she's like expanded upon certain brands. I don't know. It's down there for your viewing pleasure. The only other thing that I want to note before we kick it off with getting into this is that I am I think you've already seen how many times have I used my eyeshadow palettes this year, which was tracking the usage from January 2022 until March 31st, 2022. And then you'll see this video next, if I'm not mistaken. And then the following video is going to be all of the eyeshadow palettes that I haven't used this year. Now that is what I'm going to call it because I wanted to very much have that video up at the beginning of April. And that's when the tracking stopped, on March 31st. So it would have made a lot more sense to call it that. However, there are some palettes that are going to be in this video that will be featured in that video as well. But I have already used them. So I'm going to point it out to you in this video. No, I actually haven't used this as we're actually sitting here today. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. I think the way that I'm going to divide this up, I keep looking over here because that's where they're sitting. I think how I'm going to divide this up is we're just going to do drugstore and then indie, and I'll leave the chapters. That way you can skip around. Okay, so we're going to kick it off with drugstore, which surprisingly, they're all BH Cosmetics. Maybe that's not surprising. I don't think it is surprising. Let's start off with the 3 that you already know about if you've been following along in my deck of panning project pan. So you will know that at my local TJ Maxx, I did come across 3 of the Sweet Shop palettes. I was really surprised by that because I never saw these in store anywhere. So I do have the cherry on top, which is the red one. I honestly think this one might be my favorite. I said that the orange sherbet probably was going to be my favorite, but I think this one wins out. My only complaint with this is that it does look very red and red pink kind of monochromatic, but these red shades down here, they do lean more on the pinker side. However, they are still really pretty. This shade too, I was a little bit uncertain of is this going to be dark enough for what I want when I deepen up my outer V, and it is. It's this really pretty red plummy brown kind of color. So then like I said, we have orange sherbet as well. So this one, like I said, I thought this would be my favorite, and it's really pretty. It still very much has a place in my collection. I absolutely love the shimmer shadows in here. This one just doesn't go as dark as I would want. This brown shade kind of leaves a lot to be desired. And then I did do a full-on look with this palette. I will try to, if the videos already went up, I will leave it linked in the description box so you can go and check it out and reference it. I think that the look turned out fine and it turned out pretty. It was obviously full-on orange. And I just don't know if I was as comfortable in orange, a full-on orange look, as I am with other colors. So that orange sherbet might very much end up being a palette that I always pair with something else, which again is not a big deal, but just you know, it personally means that like I wouldn't call it a favorite because it's not like a standalone palette. But anyway, rambling aside, here is the Bubblegum palette. This one was the only one that had like a little bit of shattering to it, but I was able to clean it up quite nicely. This has now become like my favorite go-to monochromatic blue palette within my collection. Okay, so then the other 4 that are sitting here in my lap, my mom said that she found these at TJ Maxx and she said she couldn't pass it up. She knows this is my favorite brand. I told her like, you didn't have to do that. You know, this was so nice of you. So here we are. I have not, all 4 of these that I am holding, I have not yet used as we sit here today, which I don't want to. My goal is that by the end of the year, I won't have any palette that's been untouched, you know? So the first one comes from the Say It collection. I do have 2 other palettes from this collection and I really do love it. I feel like this collection was a little bit slept on. Part of that I think though was that they had the cringy names like the F off and the Let That Shit Go. So, but this one is Low Key Love You. It's the really pretty like more neutral one. It does have some pops of reds. I do think though that some of these browns over here are quite similar to the browns, like the purpley browns that you get in the Do Not Disturb and the Looking Like a Snack. So I might swatch these all out together, but yeah, really excited to play around with this one. And then the other 3 that she snagged are all of their like, I don't know what this was called. Was it their retro collection, their throwback, their dance remix? It's the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s palettes that they did. So the 80s one, if I open this one up, this is very much a like rainbow palette. Like these are some bright neons. I am really curious to play around with this and see how bright do these actually end up translating. Again, like I said, I have not yet gotten to dip into these ones. And then there's the 90s one. I'm a 90s baby, so I kind of feel like I have to call this one my favorite one. But I grew up in the 2000s, so I might call the 2000s one my favorite. Anyway, this one is pastel. I feel like this would pair really nicely with the 80s ones. You know that I'm not like the biggest fan of pastels. I am getting a little bit more comfortable with them, at least in combining them with other things. But the shimmers in here are so pretty. I don't mind a good pastel shimmer. It's really pastel mattes that I struggle to like reach for and use. And so I'm going to challenge myself this spring to really figure out good ways to like incorporate those into my looks. But anyway, like I said, no, this is the 80s. I was looking to hold up the 2000s. So here's the 2000s one. This one I know was one that I had been pining after. And my very first video in the series this year where it was like talking myself out of these eyeshadow palettes, this one was one that I was talking myself out of. So it's kind of funny that she found it and she bought it. But yeah, just really pretty. I am super interested. The shimmers in here come across more gray, taupey, and purple than they do in the pictures that I saw online. So I'm really excited to bust this one out and play around with it. And I do, even though this one is super dark and moody, I think it'll be really pretty to dip into those purples and grays and make some really interesting spring looks. Okay, so now we are going to segue into the indie brands that I have added in. There are just a handful, like a different variety of palettes. So I'm going to first start with the 3 that you already know about. So the first one would be from Blend Bunny Cosmetics. This is the Dollhouse palette. My outside packaging is already like beat up and grubby because I must go in like super hard with my makeup. But anyway, this is what this one looks like. This is her take on a neutral palette, and I have to say I really enjoy her take on it. You guys have heard me rave about this palette time and time again. I have used it. This is just a really pretty palette and a really pretty formula. None of her other 2 palettes speak to me, but I am curious to see what else this brand does come out with. Okay, so the next one that we will segue into is the Melt Amore Mariposa, my most expensive mistake so far this year. This palette retails for $70. It was limited edition. I'm not sure if it's still around. It was released, I think, in the fall of 2021. This is a really pretty color story. This is the color story from Melt that like just sunk me in. I was like, yes, I have to have this. I want to try this. And the reason I call it like a big mistake is because I'm sure you guys have heard me say, but just a lot of these shadows are fussy. A lot of the matte shadows I just find to either be patchy or they blend away. Like you have to spend a lot of time building and blending and then rebuilding and blending and rebuilding and blending. So it's just kind of annoying. The shimmers though in here are really pretty. Those are really fun to play around with. I've greatly enjoyed this orangey shimmer here and then this more like rose kind of golden pink shimmer. But there's way more mattes in this palette than there are shimmers. So that's why it's like a disappointment. You know what I mean? Like most of this palette lets me down as opposed to like just a few things letting me down. Okay, so the other indie palette that you've already seen come into my collection is Angelica Nyqvist's new collaboration. It's the Hella palette that she did in collaboration with Udens Eye. This was one that my husband picked up for me. I was not going to get this. Like I saw this and it was pretty, but it just wasn't something that I was going to add in. He picked it up and I'm really glad that he did. I really do. I've fallen in love with this. This actually, even though this is so new into my collection, this is currently one of my most used eyeshadow palettes for the year. So I think that just says a lot about this color story, this formula, this brand, and everything. I just think that she has a really good eye for putting like color stories together and making you be creative. So glad that I have this one in my collection. Okay, one that I ordered and I actually have it on my eyes today. I am wearing, all of my matte shadows come from my ABH Jackie Aina palette, and then the like pink and blue kind of shimmery shades that you were seeing come from this palette. So I've absolutely fallen in love with Sugar Drizzle. I kind of have to love them. We share the same hometown, so that's pretty exciting, right? But anyway, I had picked up their Frosty Flamingo palette and I had kind of talked myself out of this Pickle palette. But I've heard a lot of you guys say like, no, this is a really pretty green eyeshadow palette and it's different than other green eyeshadow palettes, because Lord knows I got a lot of green eyeshadow palettes. But I do have to say, I appreciate those comments. You guys were very spot on, very right. This is different from like other greens within my collection. Now, maybe not so much the matte shadows, this one and this one. I feel like I have these two matte shadows in the BH Cosmetics Avocado Toast palette. However, these shimmer shades in here are just so pretty. This one, like as I am looking at it, looks very golden, but it actually is like it shifts. It's like a pinky golden shade. I don't know. I'm always like, it's hard to get that shift onto camera, you know? But yeah, like in this lighting, it's very much gold. But when I was doing my makeup in my bedroom, this was very much like a pink shadow. And that's why I paired it with so many pinks in my eye look. But yeah, I have really just fallen in love with their formula, fallen in love with them as a brand. Highly recommend them if you've been on the fence about trying them. Okay, so another palette that I jumped on ordering like as soon as I saw it, I have always wanted to try BH Cosmetics. Their palette that spoke to me the most was the Mary Jane palette, or the Jane eyeshadow palette. The one that they just recently remastered, but it's an all shimmer palette. And I just know that all shimmer palettes and all matte palettes, I just won't reach for. I've found that out in the past, so I'm just like, no, we are not gonna bring more of those in. That palette is really pretty and full of so many like interesting, shifty, just duochrome goodness shades, but I just know it will go so underutilized within my collection. However, Heather Austin did a collaboration with them, and the minute I saw this revealed, I was like, I have to. Like, this is my subculture dreams, but from her and Adept. So I picked up the Heather Austin palette. First time trying BH Cosmetics and their formula, and I have to say, I am not at all disappointed. Like, these are just so pretty. These matte shadows blend out really effortlessly, and the shimmers in here, they're just a lot of fun to work with. They can work in like a variety of ways, at least within this palette. They can be packed onto your lid and you can have like a full-on like shimmer moment with them. Or if you use your finger, what I've found is that it shears it out a little bit and it becomes much more of a topper shade. A lot of these shadows in here too, a lot of the shimmer shadows are like duochrome shadows, just super pretty. This is the palette that I was wearing in my most recent Partners in Cream update, just in case you were wondering. But yeah, really happy to have bought this, supported another like YouTuber that I really enjoy, and gotten to try this formula. Okay, so the last two, I know, how many are there in this video? There's only two more, I promise. My husband asked me, he was like, okay, YOLO by a side, what is a brand that you really want to try their eyeshadows from? And I kind of knew like, okay, well, if you're asking me that, I think you're getting ready to make a purchase for me. So I told him Nomad Cosmetics. And then I kind of forgot that we had that conversation until this package came and I opened it and I was like, oh, he really did order me some things. So he picked up two palettes from Nomad Cosmetics, the Haunted Europe and the America's Parks palette. Really, I haven't yet gotten to play with these or dip into them, but I'm super excited to, and super excited to try out the formula. So if you have tried out Nomad Cosmetics and you really like them, or you own these two palettes, give me some ideas of like what looks and color combinations you like to do. This one, the America's Parks palette, is a little bit easier of a color story for my brain to digest. I think that this one will lend itself to effortlessly making a lot of like interesting looks, you know. I'm super interested too, these like shimmer shades that are in this middle row, they kind of have like this marbling effect to them. I don't know if that translates too well on camera, but yeah, this is super pretty, super grungy, just right up Haley's alley, you know? And then the other one, like I said, was the Haunted Europe palette. I don't know if my camera will pick up that this is like one of those, oh, what do you call them? Like, it's the shifty picture. It goes from like the little portrait of the lady, and then she turns into, I think, like she's holding like a skull and she's got a veil on. Honestly reminds me of the Layers of Fear video game. But anyway, let's open this one up. So this one, really pretty, really dark, really moody. I think he did a good job. This one though kind of makes my brain hurt just a little bit. I have pulled this one out multiple times and I've been like, I want to use this, I want to play around with this, and then I sit and I stare at it and I'm like, but I don't know what to do. So if you own this and you have some favorite looks, please let me know. I think my other hang up with using these, as funny as it's gonna sound, they have cute little imprintings on there. I don't know if you can see, like this one has like cemeteries and tree branches and bats and like all the spooky things. This one has things like bears and like geysers and, you know, things related to parks. But the imprintings are so cute on here, and it's almost like, oh, I don't wanna ruin it. Let's get over that hang up though. Okay, so just to quickly recap and wrap up this video, if you were counting, that is 14 new eyeshadow palettes that have come into my life since the beginning of this year, and that is a lot considering we are only into April. So I definitely know that I need to slow my roll. There is, like I said, I am comfortable with the size of my eyeshadow palette collection. However, there are going to be things that get neglected when you have a larger collection, and I don't want that to happen. Like, I do want to be able to show love to the palettes that are like favorites, tried and trues, like really do enjoy them. So I am going to, like I said, figure out what I want like my new low buy rules to be for my eyeshadow palettes. I will say though, out of the 14, I am pretty pleased with myself that only 6 of them have not been used as we sit here like today. Now, like I said, you were going to, in that video where I'm going to post like, what palettes haven't I used yet this year? Again, that's just talking about January to March. And so for instance, you're going to see 2 of those BH Cosmetics Sweet Shop palettes, the blue one and the orange one. But I have actually used those. Like this video is more real life, like in the present. That video is a little bit in the past. Hopefully that makes sense. But anyway, I will just quickly go over again the 6 palettes that I have not yet used yet. So I have both of the Nomad palettes, the Haunted Europe and the America's Parks, and then 4 from BH Cosmetics that we have from the Say It collection, the Low Key Love You, and then 3 of the like dance remix palettes, so the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. All right, that is it. That is all I have for you guys today. I appreciate you so much for being here, so much for listening to me ramble. I hope you're having a good day, a good night, or a good whatever, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye.